Hey Crimson, thanks for being here. Always a pleasure to have. It's a pleasure to see you all here right now. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Checking me out while I stumble my way through a Narnia book. I'm going to turn down the volume of my phone so it doesn't interrupt me anymore. There we go. That'll do. I'm sorry you didn't have a very good day. But hello! It's a pleasure to see you. I hope tomorrow is better. Twix. I don't know where Twix is. I don't know where Twix is. Oh well. Oh well. I think she's just sleeping not too far away from here, but I can't get her. I don't want to wake her up. So. Yeah. Hope the levels are good for everybody. Levels. Okay, so you're kind of in the same boat as I am, Ka, with having a lot going on, so you can't really focus too much on the streaks anyway. I dig it. First time seeing Tara's face. Here it is. You're very kind to say so, Anne. Thank you. Cass, it's up to you if you want to message me. You can. Hopefully I'll get to it. I'll be up for a while, I imagine. Probably. Oh yes, Carl, vote for us. I did. Maybe I will again soon. I'll wait till after stream then. Probably the best idea. Because obviously I won't reply in stream. Alright. Go girl. Be right back, gonna say something to a friend. Okay. Take your time, of course. I'm probably gonna start the next chapter in just a moment here anyway. Thank you for go girling. I appreciate it. Even though that's not a command here. But I can hear it in my head. I can hear a lot of things in my head. Alright, I'm going to continue on. Chapter the 6th. The people that lived in hiding. Now began the happiest times that Caspian had ever known. On a fine summer morning, when the dew lay on the grass, he set off with the badger and the two dwarfs, up through the forest to a high side on the mountains, and down onto their sunny southern slopes, where one looked across the green worlds of Arkenland. We will first go to the three bulgy bears, said Trumpkin. They came in a glade to an old hollow oak tree covered with moss, and Truffle Hunter tapped with his paw 3 times. Three, yeah, on the trunk, and there was no answer. Then he tapped again, and a woolly sort of voice from inside said, "Go away! It's not time to get up yet." But when he tapped the 3rd time, there was a noise like a small earthquake from inside, and a sort of door opened, and out came 3 brown bears, very bulgy indeed, and blinking their little eyes. And when everything had been explained to them, which took a long time because they were so sleepy, they said, just as Truffle Hunter had said, that a son of Adam ought to be king of Narnia, and all kissed Caspian. Very wet, snuffly kisses they were, and offered him some honey. Caspian did not really want honey without bread at the time in the morning, but he thought it polite to accept. It took him a long time afterward to get unsticky. After they went on till they came among tall beech trees, and Truffle Hunter called out, "Pattertwig, Pattertwig, Pattertwig!" And almost at once, bounding down from branch to branch till he was just above their heads, came the most magnificent red squirrel that Caspian had ever seen. He was far bigger than the ordinary dumb squirrels which he had sometimes seen in castle gardens. Indeed, he was nearly the size of a terrier, and the moment you looked in his face you saw that he could talk. Indeed, the difficulty was to get him to stop talking, for, like all squirrels, he was a chatterer. He welcomed Caspian at once and asked if he would like a nut, and Caspian said thanks he would, but as Pattertwig went bounding away to fetch it, Truffle Hunter whispered in Caspian's ear, "Don't look. Look the other way. It's very bad manners among squirrels to watch anyone going to a store, or to look as if you want to know where it was." Then Pattertwig came back with the nut, and Caspian ate it. After that, Pattertwig asked if he can take any messages to other friends. "For I can go around nearly everywhere without setting foot to the ground," he said. Truffle Hunter and the dwarfs thought this was a very good idea and gave Pattertwig messages to all sorts of people with queer names, telling them all to come to a feast in council on Dancing Lawn at midnight, 3 nights ahead. And you'd better tell them to bring the 3 Bulgies too. And you better tell the 3 Bulgies too, added Trumpkin. We forgot to mention it to them. Their next visit was to the 7 brothers of Shuddering Wood. Trumpkin led the way back to the saddle, and then down eastward on the northern slope of the mountains, till they came to a very solemn place among rocks and fir trees. They went very quietly, and presently Caspian could feel the ground shake under his feet. I feel the earth. As if someone was hammering down below. Trumpkin went to a flat stone about the size of the top of a water butt, and stamped on it with his foot. After a long pause, it was moved away by someone or something underneath, and there was a dark round hole with a good deal of heat and steam coming out of it. In the middle of the hole, the head of a dwarf, very like Trumpkin himself. There was a long talk here, and the dwarf seemed more suspicious than the squirrel or the bulgy bears had been, but in the end the whole party had invited to come down. Caspian found himself descending a dark stairway into the earth, but when he came to the bottom he saw firelight. It was the light of a furnace. The whole place was a smithy. A subterranean stream ran past one side of it. 2 dwarfs were at the bellows. Another was holding a pair of red-hot metal on the anvil with a pair of tongs. A 4th was hammering it, and two wiping their horny little hands on a greasy cloth, were coming forward to meet the visitors. It took some time to satisfy them that Caspian was a friend and not an enemy, but they did. They all cried, "Long live the king!" and their gifts were noble, mail shirts and helmets and swords for Caspian and Trumpkin and Knickerbrick. The badger could have had the same if he had liked, but he said he was a beast. He was, and if his claws and teeth could not keep his skin whole, it wasn't worth keeping. The workmanship of the arms was far finer than any Caspian had ever seen, and he gladly accepted the dwarf-made sword instead of his own, which looked, in comparison, as feeble as a toy and as clumsy as a stick. The 7 brothers, who were all red dwarfs, promised to come to the feast at Dancing Lawn. A little farther on, in a dry, rocky ravine, they reached the cave of the 5 black dwarfs. They looked suspiciously at Caspian, but in the end, the eldest of them said, "If he is against King Mirrors, we will have him for king." And the next oldest said, "Shall we go farther up for you? Up to the crags? There's an ogre or 2 and a hag that we could introduce you to up there." "Certainly not," said Caspian. "I should think not indeed," said Truffle Hunter. "We want none of that sort on our side." Knickerbrick disagreed with us, but Trumpkin and the badger overruled him. It gave Caspian a shock to realize that the horrible creatures out of the old stories, as well as the nice ones, had some descendants in Narnia still. "We should not have Aslan for a friend if we brought in that rebel," said Truffle Hunter as they came away from the cave of the black dwarfs. "Oh, Aslan," said Trumpkin cheerily but contemptuously. "What matters much more is that you wouldn't have me." "Do you believe in Aslan?" said Caspian and Knickerbrick. "I believe in anyone or anything," said Knickerbrick. "That'll batter these cursed Telmarine barbarians to pieces or drive them out of Narnia. Anyone or anything, Aslan or the White Witch. Understand?" "Silence, silence," said Truffle Hunter. "You do not know what you are saying. She was a worse enemy than Mirrors and all his race." "Not the dwarf she wasn't," said Knickerbrick. Their next visit was a pleasanter one. As they came lower down, the mountains opened out into a great glen or wooded gorge with a swift river running at the bottom. The open places near the river's edge were a mass of foxgloves and wild roses, and the air was buzzing with bees. The Truffle Hunter called again, "Glenstorm! Glenstorm!" And after a pause, Caspian heard the sound of hoofs. It grew louder till the valley trembled, and at last, breaking and trampling the thickets, there came in sight the noblest creature that Caspian had yet seen. The great centaur Glenstorm and his 3 sons. His flanks were glossy chestnut, and the beard that covered his Uh, sorry. The beard that covered his broad chest was golden red. He was a prophet and stargazer, and knew what they had come about. "Long live the king," he cried. "I and my sons are ready for war. When is the battle to be joined?" Up till now, neither Caspian nor the others Caspians or the others had been thinking of a war. They had some vague idea, perhaps, of an occasional raid on some human farmstead, or of attacking a party of hunters if it ventured too far into these southern wilds. But in the main, they had thought only of living to themselves in woods and caves, and building up an attempt at old Narnia and hiding. As soon as Glintstorm had spoken, everyone felt much more serious. "Do you mean a real war to drive myriads out of Narnia?" asked Caspian. "What else?" said the centaur. "Why else does your majesty go clad in mail and girt with sword?" "Is it possible, Glintstorm?" said the badger. "The time is ripe," said Glintstorm. Excuse me again. "I watch the skies, Badger, for it is mine to watch, as it is yours to remember. Tarva and Alambil have met in halls of high heaven, and on earth a son of Adam has once more arisen to rule and name the creatures. The hour is struck. Our council at the dancing lawn must be a council of war." He spoke in such a voice that neither Caspian nor the others hesitated for a moment. It now seemed to them quite possible that they might win a war, and quite certain that they must wage one. As it is now past the middle of the day, they rested with the centaurs and ate such food as the centaurs provided. Cakes of oaten meal and apples and herbs and wine and cheese. The next place they were to visit was quite near at hand, but they had to go a long way around in order to avoid a region in which men lived. It was well into the afternoon before they found themselves in level fields, warm between hedgerows. There, Truffle Hunter called at the mouth of a little hole in the green bank, and out popped the last thing Caspian expected, a talking mouse. He was, of course, bigger than a common mouse, well over a foot high when he stood on his hind legs, and with his ears nearly as long as, though broader than, a rabbit's. His name was Reepicheep, and he was a gay and martial mouse. He wore a tiny little rapier at his side and twirled his long whiskers as if they were a mustache. "There are 12 of us, sire," he said with a dashing and graceful bow, "and I place all the resources of my people unreservedly at your majesty's disposal." Caspian tried hard, and unsuccessfully, not to laugh, but he couldn't help thinking that Reepicheep and all his people could very easily be put in a washing basket and carried home on one's back. It would take too long to mention all the creatures whom Caspian met that day. Clodslee, Shovel the Mole, Shovel the Mole, the 3 hard-biters who were badgers like Truffle Hunter, Camillo the Hare, and Havelstock the Hedgehog. They rested at last beside a well at the edge of a wide and level circle of grass, bordered with tall elms, which now threw long shadows across it. For the sun was setting, the daisies closing, and the rooks flying home to bed. Here they supped on food they had brought with them, and Trumpkin lit his pipe. Knickerbrick was not a smoker. Crud. "Now," said the badger, "if only we could wake the spirits of these trees and this well, we should have done a good day's work." "Hi, I will be loved. Thanks for being here. I'll I'll get to actually talking and responding after I finish a chapter, so please forgive me." Can't we?" said Caspian. "No," said Truffle Hunter. "We have no power over them. Since the humans came into the land, felling forests and defiling streams, the dryads and naiads had sunk into a deep sleep. Who knows if they ever will stir again? And that is a great loss to our side. The Telmarines are horribly afraid of the woods, and once the trees moved in anger, our enemies would go mad with fright and be chased out of Narnia as quick as their legs could carry them." "What imaginations you animals have," said Trumpkin, who didn't believe in such things. "But why stop at trees and waters? Wouldn't it be even nicer if the stones started throwing themselves at old mirrors?" The badger only grunted at this, and after that, there was such a silence that Caspian nearly dropped off to sleep when he thought he heard a faint musical sound from the depth of the woods at his back. Then he thought it was only a dream, and turned over again. But as soon as his ear touched the ground, he felt or heard, it was hard to tell which, a faint beating or drumming. He raised his head. The beating noise at once became fainter, but the music returned, clearer this time. It was like flutes. He saw that Truffle Hunter was sitting up, staring into the wood. The moon was bright. Caspian had never been asleep longer than he thought.